Hi, friends. Hi. That net neutrality stuff was really important. That was very important. Thank you for sharing that with me. I'm just going to buffer for a while here. So yeah, my name is Scott Hanselman, and I work here. I actually work in Portland, Oregon. I work remotely on the Forest Moon. But I work in open source, so it's okay. When I made that transition from working in open source outside Microsoft to working inside Microsoft, a lot of people called me a sellout, and they said, "You're going to work for the man, and the man sucks." And but I needed to comfort myself, and somehow I was able to find comfort, and the comfort that I needed. People still think the company's evil. I'm like, well, each individual stormtrooper is really nice. I mean, before Microsoft, it was really rough for me. But afterwards, it's been pretty awesome, and the org chart is really simple now, so I've been working through that. There was a guy, I'm not sure if this is really a real quote, but there's a guy who said, I think there's maybe a world market for 5 computers. This is one of those quotes you can't really be sure about. And I think it was Abraham Lincoln that said you can't be sure about quotes on the internet. And because I don't know if that's a real quote or not, I didn't even have a picture of the guy, but I do have this really old book. So we'll just say that that's the guy. When he said that, he was talking about these giant refrigerators, and he figured there'd be a refrigerator on each continent, and those refrigerators you'd send a batch job to, and there'd be like the South American one, and there'd be the North American one. And that actually happened, right? There's the Google computer, and there's the Rackspace computer, and there's the Amazon computer. These 5 computers actually happened. Here's a picture of the Azure cloud. And we're a little behind. We're installing color, which is going to be great upgrade. And I've been working on some of that stuff myself. There's a picture of me unloading. But I was thinking about the cloud, and I was explaining this to a friend of mine at Intel, who's like a distinguished engineer of some kind. But he knows everything there is to know about the internals of the computer and the microcode, and he's been in the business for like 40 years. But he doesn't know anything about the web. So I tried to think about how I could explain the web to someone who had a background in computer science but had missed out on the last 20 or 30 years of the internet. This is someone who's a deep computer scientist but not a web person. So I tried to explain it to him like this, that, well, there's this operating system, there's hardware, and these characteristics that they teach us about what an operating system looks like, and those are some of the subsystems. And he's like, yep, I get that, and I wrote the book on that, no problem. And I said, well, virtual machines are really amazing. You can move them from place to place, from different data centers. And he's like, yeah, that's really cool. And I said, well, how do you get a virtual machine here at Intel? And he says, well, I fax this guy in Mountain View, and then a couple weeks later, he'll set up the virtual machine for me. And I was like, that's not how DevOps is supposed to work. And he says, but the fax machine is really fast. It's like 14.4 now instead of 9600. So he really didn't know how painful it was. And I started explaining to him like what a cloud system could do. I mean, you could run Linux in Azure. It takes 2 seconds. You can go and search for something and say, yeah, I want to put this Jenkins machine together. You just take those texts and you paste it in. You make a virtual machine. It's got ASCII art, which is amazing. And he's like, I've got to have that. How do I get that? That's the new web. And I was like, yeah, man, that's the new web. But even if you don't want to deal with virtual machines, because the virtual machines are kind of like a puppy, you got to keep it alive and watered. I don't have a dog. I assume that they need to be watered at some point. But it's like a puppy. I don't want to maintain a puppy. Virtual machines are something I have to keep alive, and I have to run Windows Update on and apt-get everything. I prefer to do things more platform as a service and run websites, do stuff like that. I like to trash my hotel room. So running websites and stuff is like trashing your hotel room. And then you come back, like the room that I'm going to be returning to after this. It better be perfect when I get back because it's been completely trashed. While having a virtual machine is kind of like, your first house. And you have to maintain it and keep it alive. And platform as a service just makes me extremely happy. What he didn't understand was how simple it is now to scale stuff. And he couldn't get his head around this because in the old days, someone would tell him to scale up the system, and he would go to PC Micro Center and buy additional hardware and spend the weekend updating the cloud. He was the cloud. And then someone said, hey, make that a 3-node cluster. And he would work all weekend, and the boss would feel like that they were dragging a slider bar. And now the boss actually can drag a slider bar, and how amazing that is. I showed him how I can go and scale stuff up in the command line and how amazing that is. And he was like, that's amazing. What just happened? And I said, well, it's magic. It's magic. It's all open source. He said, you can pick any language you want. He's like, any language at all? He could not deal with that. So yeah, it's all open source. It's super fun. It's a whole other way about thinking about stuff. And the dashboards. And he says, dashboards? I said, oh, yes. DevOps people love their dashboards. I showed him our new dashboards. It's very pretty, and there's all sorts of cool stuff. He's like, I don't know. That's an awful lot of dashboards. And I said, more dashboards are better. I've been to Velocity. I've been to all of the booths of all the vendors. And from what I can tell, if you get enough D3JS and some SVG, you can make the best dashboard that there is. So this is every dashboard that I saw at Velocity this year. But my buddy at Intel said, no, we don't need a dashboard. We have this dashboard. We have top. And he's going to get color soon with HTOP, so he's pretty excited about that. He showed me the prototype of a dashboard that he's working on that was like this, and he was insisting that it was way, way better than HTOP, so I'm looking forward to seeing that. I was like, I don't know if I can see the difference between HTOP and top. And he's like, who are you? What are you even looking at me for? It's like the difference between Mario and Luigi. Luigi's just better. Just shut up, shut up. Luigi's better. Like, why would you even say something like that? You're a horrible person. HTOP is better, so, The level at which people who operate in the cloud work is so much more abstract. I saw this amazing talk by Adrian Cockcroft, who was formerly of Netflix. I think they used to be called Quickster. And Adrian was talking about SSDs. Now, Adrian is English, and that means he gets basically, he rolls +2 charisma just for showing up. So Adrian is at this talk, and he's presenting about how they're switching everything at Netflix to SSDs, and he gives this talk, and he was talking about the IOPS, how they went from 500 IOPS to like 10,000, and it went from like $1 to like $3, and he gave the whole speech, and I can't do an English accent, but it was amazing. And then afterwards, and he's got a PhD in unsolvable numbers or something. So then he gives the talk, and 007, and then he finishes, and then this little, like, Danish guy comes up afterwards, because I think we were in Denmark, Scandinavian countries, I don't know, they all look the same to me. And he says, he was like 19. He's like, actually, sir, SSDs have a very high failure rate, and unless you fail to use the trim command, and he went, that's my Danish accent, and he gave a whole speech about how basically Cockcroft was an idiot and SSDs suck, and how dare you move your entire company over, and like, what do you think about that? It's like, you don't come at 007 like that. You don't. So, seriously, you're going to die. He doesn't know he's going to die, but we're all watching him, and we're ready for him to die. And Cockcroft says, well, I don't know. It's not my problem. I'm renting them. I mean, if an English dude could drop a mic or a tiny, like a lavalier mic and just kind of like go like that, that's what needed to happen right there. And the amazing part about it was that the kid didn't even know he was cut. It was like one of those ninja movies where the guy is just, I can't do it because I'm like a computer guy, but he goes, and the guy's head has been cut, and it's sliding off his face, but the body doesn't even know it's been cut yet. It was amazing. People need to understand that what level is Cockcroft working at? What level is Netflix working at? It's like, hey, more money, more perf, slider bar, I got a credit card, boom, it's better. I don't even worry about it. The cloud provider is going to deal with that. And for my hardware friend at Intel, he couldn't believe that. Now, I think it was a guy it was Artur Bergman, that's a picture of Artur Bergman, from Fastly, who said this at Velocity in Germany, that if you're not, this is paraphrasing, if you're not using SSDs, you're all idiots. And I think he said the F word about 40 times. So that means that he really meant it. So cloud operates at a very, very high level, and my buddy's like, wow, that's really amazing. So I said, let's shift our attention over to the browser. Let's think about what's happening on the client. We talked about the server. Let's think about what's happening on the client. I said, remember that discussion we had about the operating system and what's going on there? I said, once upon a time, you would sit down at a computer that looks like this, and it would go and it would talk to a refrigerator that looks like that. And you would go and decide to go and Google with Bing to go and get something. But that screen there really exists there, but it's not really there. That's just a dumb terminal. It's actually happening over there. And all the work happens in that refrigerator. And this worked pretty well. And when I go get my oil changed at Toyota, they're actually still using a VT100 terminal. So it's great. And then this happens, right? And then Berners-Lee goes and makes this. This is the very first web page. This funny story. This is actually still at the same URL, which is pretty awesome. It's amazing how often other people break URLs, but the first web page is still at the same URL. Another interesting side story is that there's a guy at my work named Heinrich, and I met him in the kitchen one day, and he was a very nice guy, and he left, and my buddy was like, "Did you know who that was?" I was like, "That was Heinrich, a guy named Heinrich." And he said, "No, he invented HTTP." So I was like, "Oh, crap." So I go and I Google the guy, and I look at the HTTP spec, and there's his name, Heinrich Nielsen. He was Berners-Lee's intern. So then, and he works with me at work, like we're peers. We're peers. Peers. So I see him again. "Hey, Scott, how's it going?" "Hey, Heinrich, what do you do?" I was like, do I curtsy? I wasn't sure what the appropriate, good job on the internet. Completely ruined my relationship with Heinrich. I have no way to talk to this guy anymore. It's a really inappropriate situation, and very, very uncomfortable with him. So then this happens. We're moving forward in time here, and this happens. And how do we know that this happened? Because we were navigating to a web page, and then Java loaded. And it was okay. It was good, right? It was like a little island of activity. And then these guys were like, "We can do it too." And then these guys were like, "We've got YouTube. We're still relevant." And what were we doing was we were trying to make this plug-in virtual machine. We were trying to make an operating system within another universe. When I go to my my Toyota dealership, and I told you that they use this VT100 terminal, one day I showed up to get the oil change, and I went in, and the guy said, "We have an all-new system." I love new systems. Show me the new system. And he boots up Windows XP, and then he loads up an old version of Firefox, and he loads up this Java jar file, and it's like, "Are you sure you want it on Java?" And it's like, "Unblock." And it's like, "Well, write your name if you want to unblock Java." And then he loads this jar file, which then loads a VT100 terminal and then terminals back into the same machine in the back. Then looks me in the eye with a straight face and says, "This is way better than before." That's not what Berners-Lee wanted. He didn't want this amazing part with the body of the browser and then this island of activity here, and we would have just put stuff like that. And then all the while JavaScript is happening, and I keep having to explain to my bosses that it's not that. My buddy Leon put together a flowchart about what it's like to work with JavaScript. It's an extremely accurate flowchart. So JavaScript is happening, and people are doing crazy stuff, like I did a Commodore 64 emulator in JavaScript, and I wanted to see what someone could do. So I started exploring about all the crazy stuff folks are doing in JavaScript, and I noticed that there's this gentleman here who is insane. This is an implementation of Linux that's running entirely in JavaScript and emulating an x86 processor as well. This is real. You can tell because you right-click and it doesn't say Flash, because if you right-click and it says Flash, you're like, "Cheater." And then I could go like at the command line here and then actually compile with an open source C compiler, "Hello World." But that's cool, but it's not deeply cool. What would be really cool would be opening up an iPhone simulator and then opening up Mobile Safari, and then inside of that, then going and running a JavaScript virtual machine on a Windows machine. So, I mean, that would be because internet. So it turns out JavaScript is actually useful, and people are doing cool stuff with it, and building all sorts of cool stuff, and you can't, turn it off. And people are taking C++ and compiling it into amazing stuff, and this is probably the part in the talk where I run Quake in the browser in JavaScript, right? Right? No. Because that would be lame. So if I take the things that JavaScript does and I apply that to the different characteristics of an operating system, one could propose that JavaScript is an operating system, that it's the virtual machine we've always asked for and it requires no plugins. And since then we can invoke Atwood's law, which indicates that any application that can be written in JavaScript will eventually be written in JavaScript, which unfortunately is actually also true about Microsoft Excel. This is a complete implementation of Pac-Man written entirely in Excel, such that each pixel is a cell. This is like, oops, this is real. And this is such an amazing piece of software that it actually cannot be stopped. Yeah. Yeah. Don't try to stop the train. We're coming for you. Oops. So then, given Atwood's law, we of course apply all that stuff to the other operating system that's running on your mobile device. Now, Zuckerberg doesn't think, of course, that this was a good idea. He thinks that going native was the right idea. I think that's a mistake. I think HTML5 is happening and they can't stop it. I think one of our great philosophers said that the avalanche has already begun. It's too late for the pebbles to vote. You guys know who that great philosopher was? That was, thank you. Who said that? We're going to dinner later. That was amazing. Kosh from Babylon 5. That's an actual nerd, people. I'm disappointed that 1,000 nerds in a room and we had one person who was a Babylon 5 fan. Thank you for that. You got HTML5 and CSS. HTML5 really isn't anything. It's nothing at all. It's JavaScript that's doing all the cool stuff. There's a lot going on in the background. But there was a time when HTML was hard. There was a time when the most advanced work in computer science happened in HTML tables. And if you knew tables, you could get a job. There was a time when I was homeless, and they said, "Do you know tables?" And I was like, "Yes, I do." Junior engineer. Then they said, "Do you know row span?" Senior engineer. I was running the team. I was running the team entirely based on my skills with row span. HTML5 now is just a bunch of divs, right? It's just divs. It's the structure. CSS does all the color and the style. CSS is such an intuitive language. It gives you exactly what you need. It's fun to use. It's expressive. It's powerful. It's a joy to work with. And it makes people happy. And it's part of today's modern web. And I really enjoy working in it. And then JavaScript. It's a new JavaScript, right? It's not your parents' JavaScript. With JavaScript today, today's modern JavaScript, you don't even need to learn the bad parts. And if you look at Ressig's book on called JavaScript Ninja, you'll notice that there is a samurai on the cover, and that is because JavaScript is loosely typed. Another great philosopher once said that JavaScript is the assembly language of the web. Anyone know who that said that? No, I said that. I said that just now. And a bunch of people on Reddit disagreed with me, so I went and I asked one of the people who created JavaScript if that was true. I went and I asked Brendan Eich. I said, "Brendan Eich, is JavaScript the assembly of the web?" And he says, "Well, I said that it was the x86. That is actually Brendan Fraser. That is Brendan Eich. But Brendan Fraser is a really attractive man. And he said that, yes, it is like the x86 of the web. And I appreciated that. I appreciate Brendan Fraser's expressiveness there. This is actually a good moment just to thank some of the people who've helped me in the DevOps space, and the HTML space, and the JavaScript space, like Brendan. People like John Allspaw, people like Theo Schlossnagel, Pamela Fox, Douglas Crockford, Steve Souders, Laura Swanson, Google's Jeffrey Dean, and of course the father of us all, Tim O'Reilly. It's important that people understand that we don't want to let JavaScript have too many layers, though. You don't want to have these layers add too much complexity, because you think that you're slick, you get all these abstractions, and then it doesn't quite work out for you. They say, though, that no one really writes JavaScript anymore, right? They write jQuery. And I don't know if that's true or not, because I know jQuery. And what's great about this is that now that you know, there's jQuery right there. I looked him up on IMDb. You are never going to be able to say jQuery again. You can't say any of it. jQuery, jQuery UI. You're always going to be thinking about some of the great work that jQuery has brought us, like Fred, the show, Camp Fred, Night of the Living Fred. I'm really excited that Zombievers is in post-production right now. So jQuery is going places, people. You think that you're going to build something amazing in JavaScript, and you have this image in your mind about what it's going to be, and it never quite works out the way that you want it to work out. And you don't know whose fault it is, but you feel really bad. And you're like, I don't really even know. So I think that people really need to think about using Vanilla.js, spending more time there. Yeah, they like Vanilla.js. Expecting more from their web tools. In closing, I told my friend that he has massive scale and elasticity on the cloud side in his choice of languages. Don't forget how powerful the machine is. We've got pocket supercomputers in our back pockets that we are using to talk about cats on the internet. And they have accelerated graphics cards that we're not using. You can have unlimited virtual machines, and you also have one additional virtual machine for every user. You have a virtual machine on their pocket supercomputer. So remember, friends, you are powerful. And this is a looping GIF, which is in itself amazing. You know this stuff. You know the cloud. Get to work. Thank you very much.